Hello, I'm Dieter. Welcome to Win Some Lose More, and you join me for a review of Kingdomino Duel. This follows in the line of other games that have Duel or The Duel at the end of their names, which means there was an original game that they've now turned into a two-player only game. Think Seven Wonders, Imhotep, those kinds of games I've looked at before. Kingdomino was a domino tile drafting. Instead of numbers, it was landscape tiles that you drafted and put into a grid, 5x5 grid, to try and just score points based on adjacency and whatnot. Now this has taken that. I'm not going to tell you necessarily how to play. I'll allude to it as I go. I'm going to work through my six categories that I talk about in these reviews, starting with mechanisms. They've changed that now to a roll and write system. This isn't a system I'm particularly familiar with. I've played a few roll and writes and, Yahtzee and such things way back in the day, and Roman roll and some things, but they've grown a lot in the last kind of 5 years. They're probably one of the most prevalent mechanisms that you'll find. A lot of games have come out, ranging in scope and difficulty and whatnot. So it was a bit of an interesting thing to see that Kingdomino, this very simple, very welcoming, very accessible game, very fast, suddenly was becoming something completely different. But I think it works. I do. The domino now is made up of the two die faces that you draft. So there's still a little bit of that draft at the beginning, and then there's still figuring out where the placement of that domino goes. It's lost. I don't want to compare it too much to Kingdomino because you might not have played it and you're only checking this out for the first time. But there used to be a really cool thing within the draft last time where which tile you took in one round determined the order in which you get to choose the next round. And that was just a really cool thing. If you got the worst one, you actually got to choose first next time and that kind of thing. Whereas this, it's just a back and forth because there's two players. They've balanced that out. It's just two players. So it's just a back and forth. So I have a go, you have a go, I have a go. We keep going until we can't go anymore. And so mechanically, it actually works quite well. I was a little bit surprised with how smooth and simple this was. As I say, you get two dice, you arrange them however you like, and then you draw those in onto your map. And that's the domino. And then they've got placement rules about either having to touch the central castle there is on the sheet, or a matching symbol once you've started building this out. And so it presents its own kind of challenge. And so I was pleasantly surprised. And there are special powers that shake up the mechanism slightly. That's a nice twist. I think twists are something that Bruno Cathala is kind of more known for. His a relatively simple game, but his something bordering on ridiculous just to have a bit of fun with it. And that's here. Whenever you don't get certain things, you can move up these central tracks, and that could unlock for you a special one-off power. And they're a little bit game-breaking, like intentionally. Like instead of having to put the dice as a domino, you can put them wherever you want, or that kind of thing. So just something that mitigates the luck, but also makes you feel kind of powerful in that moment. You get to do this big, powerful thing just once. So the mechanisms work. There's not much to talk about. I'm being a little bit vague because there's not masses to say with the mechanisms, because you roll the dice, you draft them, and you draw it in. That's largely it. I will come to another bit of the mechanisms right now, actually, when I'm talking about the theme. So the theme is building a kingdom, I think, except the kingdom's already there on your sheet, and what you're drafting, the faces of the dice, are houses or banners or shields of a house or something, and some of them have crosses on which mean lords belonging to that house. It's not very clear. To be fair, yes, the original one, the theme was about colour and stuff, so it was still building a kingdom, but it was the yellow plains or the green whatever it is, and the sea and whatnot, so it was very much not there either. But they seem to have abstracted it even further. Yes, for the virtue of you're drawing stuff in, and it needs to be nice, simple things. I get that. But they've abstracted it even further. And so that link then I was saying between theme and mechanisms here, because of the drawing, The shields are very simple to draw, they're great, and they've got little X's on some of them, that's great. Mechanically that works really well, that helps me as the player to immediately know what I'm doing with that die. But thematically, why am I doing that in this world? Well, an X is a lord. How is an X a lord? And sometimes you get to just put an extra X in. Did you import? Did you hire from outside? Where have they come from? That kind of thing. So the theme here is presented, but is thin at best. Not much there. Art. I'm going to complain when there isn't really much to complain about, partly because I'm British and that's what we do. But the art on the box here is cartoony and fun, and the original one was similar. And then the sheets that you get inside are this pastely, very, very like faint, not cartoony. I don't really know how to describe it. You know, my art language is dreadful. To me, it doesn't really match. The box doesn't seem to match the sheet that you're working on. Whereas in the original, the style on the box was the style of the tiles. It was this big, bold, bright stuff. And now I get that again for mechanical, practical reasons. And maybe this comes into graphic design or production that we'll talk about in a minute. It makes it easier to see what you're drawing, because at the end of the round you kind of section off each type of shield that you've put in, and so it's clearer to see those lines if there's not big bright colours. I get that. And I don't really notice it. It's not offensive. It's not like, oh, how does this doesn't match up? This is a completely different style. It just, on reflection, I go, oh, they don't quite go together. So it's a little bit weird. However, graphic design is nearly perfect. I say that because every symbol that is on there makes complete sense as to what it's doing. There's one that's a little, you have to look up the rule the first time that you play because you have to choose something now. Most of the powers that you get, I'm talking about specifically on that central sheet, most of those powers relatively obvious as to what they mean, or if you've read the rules once, you know what they all mean. But there is one that you get bonus points at the end for a certain type of shield. You need to choose that now rather than using it once. But most of the graphic design is spot on. As I say, there's not much there. The drawing of the symbols is super easy. The crosses, at the end of the game, it's number of that shield, multiply number of crosses in that shield area. It just makes sense and it presents that really simply. But one annoying error. Not error, it was clearly a conscious choice. The castle in the middle has a not coloured in roof. And that is all the clue that you get that there's this extra rule. Every other rule is on the sheet or on the central sheet, really clearly laid out. This one rule says once during the game, when you draft a die that doesn't have a cross on it or only has one cross on it, once during the game you get to add an additional cross and then colour in your roof to prove that you've done it. Firstly, going back to the art, it's so faint. It took me a while to realise that the roof was empty and that was the reminder. Secondly, there is no symbology whatsoever to remind me of that rule. Every single thing else in the game is there for me to see and to remind me as a new player what everything does. I've played this, 10, 12 times at this point. I taught somebody new a few days ago and I forgot the rule again. I've been playing this loads of times and I forgot it again because it's just not there. It's not really clear to teach. So that lets it down. It really does. Just that one thing. If it was just somewhere on your sheet that says the castle equals, you get to put an extra cross somewhere or whatever it is, it would just make every rule as clear as all of the others, but that one really lets it down. Production is great for what it is. It's a pad of paper. It comes with some pencils. The dice are big and chunky. The box is the size it needs to be and it's magnetic, something really satisfying about a magnetic box. There's not really anything wrong. It's a good production. Blue Orange typically does good productions. I was fortunate enough to pick this up in a New Year's sale, so it was relatively cheap for what it is. Even at full price, it's not an expensive product. So I'd say the production is good. It's really satisfying to roll those dice, to hear these big things clatter along, and because they're custom dice, it's all etched in. It's really clear as to what those symbols are. The production is really good. And then we come to the sixth thing, audience, that I like to talk about. Now, immediately there's the limitation that this is a 2-player only game, and that might suit you right now, because in the circumstances that we're in, 2 players often is the most that we can get, if we even get that much. Who is it for? I don't think you need to have played Kingdomino to play Kingdomino Duel. I don't even think it follows that if you like one, you'll like the other. It obviously shares some similarities, but they're different enough games, because that core mechanism is so different. It doesn't necessarily marry up. So who is this for? I keep trying to answer that question. If you like roll and writes, it's a simple but fast good one. It's a nice filler. It says 20 minutes on the box. It doesn't take 20 minutes. It takes about 10-15 minutes. So if you want a little quick filler one, it's a good one. If you don't know roll and writes and don't like roll and writes, I'm not particularly keen on them. But because it's so light, because it's so quick, it suits me. And it was, again, this was a good hit at lunchtimes at work, because it was just a quick thing. You sit down, we don't have to be chatting all the time, just do it. Oh, okay, just marking things off as you go. It's just such a breezy experience. There's not quite the tension that you'd get from another game. But it works well, and it's accessible. And I say, if that one rule was clearer, you'd feel like you get the game really quick. It is really easy to teach the core mechanism. It's just a couple of those fiddly things, some of those central powers just need reminding of, and that you get an extra X once. Lets it down. I keep going over. So I would say that the box is right. It says 8+. Yeah, makes sense. It's for 2 people. Yes, it says 20 minutes. I'd say 10 to 15. But it's really light. It's really welcoming in its aesthetic, and the dice are nice. There's loads of pads of paper, so you can loads of sheets of paper in the pad rather. So you'll get loads of plays out of it. As I say, if you pick it up for under £10, it's a good filler. If you're looking for good decision space, it's okay. It's okay for that. But it works well. It's fast, so it doesn't really matter about the depth so much, I find, with shorter games. So that's kind of it. If you're looking for a 2-player roll and write with a visual spatial aspect, as many of them are, but some of them are just numbers. This is a spatial element with good production and an almost very clear rule set. Kingdomino Duel, if you can get it, is a good one. So that's my review of it. I hope that was helpful for you. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you don't already, and hit the bell icon so you stay updated when I put out new material. If you want to, please do find me on social media. Just search Win Some Lose More on the usual platforms. You'll find me. I hope you join me again for the next video. I look forward to it. See you then. I've been Dieter for Win Some Lose More. Goodbye.